A college girl suddenly gets transported into a novel and becomes the villainous evil witch. The witch's fate is tragic. 10 years later, she will die by the sword of the future emperor. Right now, the tyrant who will kill the witch in the future is just a little boy. That boy has curly blonde hair, blazing red eyes, and an incredibly adorable face. He is the emperor's illegitimate son, abandoned and sent to this icy, desolate land, left in the witch's care. Facing the young tyrant who will kill her someday, the witch forces a strained smile, her steps hesitant. It is over. The inevitable has come. The boy is the living, breathing villain. In the original story, the witch reluctantly takes in the young tyrant but never pays him any attention, abandoning him for years without care. Later, when the emperor's only legitimate prince dies from illness, the emperor is forced to bring his illegitimate son back to the palace. When he grows up, that young tyrant becomes cruel and ruthless. Though he could rightfully inherit the throne, he insists on killing the former emperor to seize power. The witch, obeying the former emperor's orders, must face him on the battlefield and ultimately dies by his sword. Before dying, the witch uses her last strength to curse him. The usurper will lose love and companionship and live out his days in lonely ruin. Years later, the tyrant accidentally meets the story's heroine. They fall in love at first sight and begin a secret affair. But the moment the tyrant confesses his feelings to her, the witch's curse takes effect. Illusions flash before the girl's eyes, revealing the tyrant's brutal nature scene by scene, and she flees in terror. The story ends in tragedy. Those 5 heroines can never be together. But none of that matters now, because after inhabiting the witch's body, Cliff fully understands the story's plot. Facing the crazed tyrant, she hesitates, unsure if she should kill him early on. Yet in reality, the future tyrant is just a pitiful little boy, shivering in the cold wind and snow, hands tightly clasped, stammering. I think I have made things difficult for you. I am really sorry." Seeing the witch's hesitant expression, the little tyrant sadly continues, saying it is okay if she wants to send him back. Hearing this, the witch can't help but feel a pang of sympathy. This timid child does not resemble the tyrant from the story at all. Her reason tells Cliff she must eliminate potential danger completely, but her hand won't move. Even after crossing into the witch's body, she still carries a human heart. Thinking this, Cliff's eyes widen. If she can raise this child well, could she change the future? Even if he can't become a great sage, maybe he could at least grow into a kinder person. The more she thinks about it, the more hopeful Cliff feels. With enough sincerity and love, she might raise the boy into someone who won't kill her someday. Cliff coughs softly, then says to the boy before her, "Honestly, I do not look like someone who'd have trouble with a little kid like you, do I?" The wind carries her words kindly, wanting the little tyrant to calm down, but the witch's naturally villainous face and cold tone make it sound anything but gentle. The little tyrant trembles, tears welling at the corners of his eyes. Cliff feels utterly confused. She thought she had spoken as gently as possible. Where else could he possibly go? Does he have anywhere else to turn? The forced smile Cliff makes only looks threatening in the boy's eyes. He quickly covers his mouth with his hands, trying not to cry. Just then, the steward scolds Cliff for scaring the little tyrant into tears. Witnessing this, Cliff silently steels herself. She can't let this continue. She has to pull herself together. To survive, she must raise this child well. The little tyrant, seeing Cliff's icy expression, is so frightened he collapses into the steward's arms, crying inconsolably. The steward asks Cliff what she did to the child. Cliff replies she did not do anything. The steward immediately understands just doing nothing is terrifying enough for His Highness. The steward advises Cliff to go look in the mirror. Standing before it, Cliff can't help but be captivated by her flawless reflection, truly stunning. When he was young, the caretaker himself had once been overwhelmed by that beauty. Seeing her self-admiring look, the caretaker explained that he wanted Cliff to pay attention to managing his expressions. After all, what child is not afraid of that stern face? The caretaker gently wiped away the little tyrant's tears and worried aloud whether such a small child could grow up well in such a harsh place. Cliff thought to himself that as long as he was carefully cared for, he would not die. The main question was what kind of person he would become. After a while, the little tyrant stopped crying, and the caretaker took him back to rest. Suddenly, Cliff stopped them, crossed his arms, and strained to force a not too scary expression. Clearing his throat, he said, "Find him a warmer room, please." Hearing that weak children are prone to colds, the caretaker understood Cliff's concern and smiled as he led the little tyrant upstairs. In this icy land where snow swirled all year round, Cliff wrote a letter to the emperor, reporting that the boy had arrived safely. But it took the emperor 2 weeks to reply, and in the letter, not a single word was asked about the child's well-being. Cliff was so angry he tore the letter to pieces and threw it into the fireplace. A careless person like that, no wonder he was eventually killed by his own son. The little tyrant's name was P3, a crude name his lowly born mother had given him by the fireside. It sounded like chunks of burning wood crackling in the fire. Cliff thought to himself, poor mothers can only come up with names like this. No matter how you put it, a ruthless tyrant named P3 still strikes me as rather funny. But then Cliff suddenly remembered he was the one the tyrant would kill soon, and the humor quickly faded. That night, Cliff focused intently in his room, preparing a magical ointment. As he was about to teleport the medicine to the caretaker, he unexpectedly ran into P3 wandering the hallway. Cliff froze for a moment, dropping the bottle, which shattered on the floor. Seeing the glass shards scattered on the ground, P3 immediately froze as well, barely even daring to breathe. After a moment of silence, Cliff reached out to the boy, warning him to be careful not to get hurt by the glass on the floor. P3's whole body trembled as he stammered out apologies. Cliff felt a chill but knew he had not done anything wrong, so he did not see why he should apologize. P3 dropped to his knees, hands clasped together, tears streaming like a waterfall, repeatedly saying, "I was wrong, I was wrong. You want to turn me into X, do not you?" It turned out he would heard his mother say before that if he teased Cliff would turn him into X. At that, the boy was so terrified he curled up on the floor, trembling uncontrollably. Cliff was full of question marks. Turn into X, that is just ridiculous. Hearing the boy begging for forgiveness, Cliff hastily explained and urged him to stand up. What if a shard cuts your knee? Besides, why would I turn someone into X? If I wanted to, I could create a million X's at any time. The caretaker heard the commotion and rushed over, seeing the scene, and immediately assumed Cliff was bullying the little tyrant again. Cliff quickly gestured to deny it. "I am innocent." Hearing the caretaker's scolding, Cliff sighed deeply, helplessly apologized to the boy. "I won't turn you into X, okay? But from now on, if you see glass shards on the floor, do not move around carelessly." Then, Cliff's expression grew even scarier. "X is still mild. I will turn you into a super deep, super terrifying abyss creature." The caretaker's face went pale. He could not believe it, and the little tyrant looked even more frightened. Cliff sneered coldly, "So, I just want to scare you." The caretaker cautiously and patiently comforted the boy. To change Cliff's image in the boy's eyes, the caretaker decided on her own that tonight, His Highness would read classic tales to him. She would definitely read them in a very gentle voice. Just as Cliff was about to refuse, the boy turned his head with wide, expectant eyes fixed on her. Really, his eyes sparkled with light. Looking closer, his delicate face was even more refined than a girl's. "You will read me the classic tales, won't you?" Cliff was blinded by the radiant light shining from the boy. "All right, I will read to you. Just do not shine so brightly, it is hurting my eyes." The boy joyfully ran back to his room, but Cliff grabbed him by the collar, eyes narrowed in warning. He has always been like this, why even bother reading fairy tales to him? But then Cliff admitted, the boy actually really liked His Highness. When you are in front of someone you like, you get nervous and do not know what to say. That night, Cliff kept his promise and went to the little tyrant's room. Young London ran up and led Cliff to the bedside. Once inside, Cliff realized the fairy tale book he would grabbed was called The Snow Queen. The boy looked at Cliff eagerly and helped him sit beside him. Cliff tried to tell the story in the calmest voice he could muster. Once upon a time, there was a cold and merciless Snow Queen full of schemes. She used a magic mirror made of ice to see the entire world. One day, she spotted an incredibly adorable young man and decided to capture him. The Snow Queen hoped the young man would forget his old world, so she planted shards of ice in his eyes and heart. At this point, Cliff felt the story was too cruel and secretly glanced at the little tyrant. Surprisingly, the boy was listening intently, his face full of focus. Cliff continued reading. From then on, the young man could only see illusions, blindly obeying the Snow Queen's voice in his head. Later, a girl who loved the young man came to the icy kingdom, helped clear his eyes, and realized everything he would seen was false. The young man then stabbed the Snow Queen in the chest with an ice blade. She bled transparent blood and died. After that, the young man and the girl fell in love and lived happily ever after. When the story ended, Cliff frowned, thinking, that is truly a disturbing tale. But the little tyrant sighed, feeling sorry for the Snow Queen. She really cared for the young man, yet he ended up killing her. Hearing that, Cliff was stunned. He had thought the boy was just a silly kid always worried about turning into a monster, but he actually thought deeply about this. Cliff decided that first, he had to teach the boy how to read and write. The next morning, the little tyrant woke very early, quietly singing as he packed his school bag, then went to Cliff's place to study. At that time, Cliff was basking in the morning sunlight, engrossed in a book, thinking to savor a little peace before the boy arrived. But soon, loud knocking shattered the morning calm, and the boy peeked in with his backpack on. Cliff hurried to stand. He never expected the boy to show up so early on his very first day of school. He thought he would sleep in all day. Cliff prepared a desk and chair for the boy, but the desk was too big and too tall. When he sat down, his feet barely touched the floor. The funny sight made Cliff almost burst out laughing inside. Look at that little tyrant. So ridiculous, but outwardly she kept a calm expression. She snapped her fingers and used magic to shrink the desk and chair to just the right size. Instantly, the furniture shrank, and the boy's eyes lit up. So this is magic, huh? Cliff smiled to herself. Got you now. Kid, want me to teach you a little more? Then Cliff conjured a small whiteboard made of ice and wrote the basic English letters on it. Just by touching the letters, you could hear their sounds. This was a simple reading machine Cliff had made herself. Seeing the little tyrant's bewildered look like he would never seen this before made Cliff want to laugh until she cried at how clueless he was. But outwardly, she remained cold and aloof. After setting everything up, Cliff told him to study the English letters on his own and that she would test him later, while she sat nearby to continue researching magical potions. The little tyrant was very serious, holding a cat-shaped pen and practicing writing diligently. Cliff thought to herself that a child who'd never been to school would surely struggle with the basics. But then, suddenly, he appeared right beside her like a ghost. Cliff jumped, dropping the potion bottle into the cauldron. "What are you doing? That is dangerous, get away," the boy said. "I have already memorized everything you told me to learn." Cliff was shocked. It had only been 10 minutes, how was that possible? To test him, she immediately gave him a quiz and he got a perfect score. To verify, she immediately tested him, and the boy scored a perfect mark again. Such a talented young lord made Cliff feel uneasy. Clearly, he had said before that he would never been taught, yet now he was learning so quickly. She thought memorizing letters would take 3 or 4 days, so she had not prepared the next lesson. While Cliff was still racking her brains about what to have him do next, the little tyrant standing beside her spoke up. Though hesitant, she asked a simple question. Could he already learn how to write His Highness's name? According to tradition, when learning to write, the first thing everyone wants to write is their own name. But the boy wanted to learn Cliff's name instead, which was rather unusual. Before she could think much, Cliff wrote her own name right in front of him, and also wrote the little tyrant's surname, Pippa. Looking at the names on the paper, the boy quietly thanked Cliff. Cliff did not understand why she had not really done anything worth thanking for. The little tyrant shyly mumbled, "On the very first day I arrived, Your Highness told me to come inside quickly, so I would not catch cold. Your Highness was the first to worry about me. Not only that, Your Highness taught me to write. I remember all these kindnesses in my heart." Hearing this, Cliff suddenly felt embarrassed and did not know how to respond. The little tyrant, growing impatient, lightly brushed her small hand aside and said, all right, enough talk, go home now." In the following days, Cliff continued teaching the boy how to read and write, but the little tyrant truly was a prodigy. Within a week, he mastered a month's worth of material. The southern noble's talent made Cliff a bit worried. She instructed the steward to absolutely not teach the boy any combat skills or self-defense techniques. At the same time, Cliff carefully asked the steward if the boy showed any strange behavior. For example, sudden outbursts or violent tendencies. The steward's mind immediately flashed with big question marks. Is Your Highness serious? The little Pippa's biggest flaw is actually being too obedient. Cliff maintained a polite facade, but inwardly she thought that was only temporary. Soon after, the steward remembered something. If anything was unusual about the boy, it was that he was extremely lonely. Lonely, Cliff's jaw dropped in disbelief. A future undefeated tyrant of the world, and yet he was lonely. At the end of the day's lessons, the little tyrant bowed his head in farewell and left. Watching that lone figure, the word lonely echoed repeatedly in Cliff's mind. She had never considered this before, but now realized that to nurture his emotional stability and social skills, he truly needed a friend. But in this snowy frontier land, there was not a single child his age, and she certainly could not introduce him to any suspicious grown men as friends. Suddenly, a bright idea sparked in Cliff's mind. Maybe it is not so bad. That would be a white puppy for him. It is a species native to the snowy region. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary puppy, but it is actually a hybrid between a demon beast and a wolf. Don't be fooled by its small size now. When fully grown, it is said to be bigger than a lion. Cliff carefully placed the puppy on the table to examine it closely. The puppy was not aggressive at all. In fact, it was very friendly. Moreover, its bloodline contains demon beast blood, so it won't freeze to death. There really could not be a more suitable companion. But the question was, how to explain this gift to Pippa? If she said it in a blunt, awkward way, no one else has one like this, or pretended to brag, claiming she found it on the road, or acted reluctant, saying, it is not like I went looking for it for you. Imagining those 3 scenarios, Cliff thought they all sounded too cheesy and worn out. Forget it, it is best to say nothing, just hand it over directly. A moment later, Cliff cast a protective charm on the puppy to enhance its resistance. Wrapping it up carefully, she secretly headed to Pippa's room. She was not sure if the little tyrant was asleep yet, but along the way, she started feeling uneasy. After all, she was the owner of this castle, so why was she sneaking around like this? Well, just give it to him and leave immediately. Cliff lightly knocked on the door, and Pippa's clear voice called out, who is it? It is the steward, Cliff said. Hearing the boy's voice, she panicked, unsure how to respond, so she simply placed the puppy right in front of the door and left it there, thinking, little demon beast, you are on your own now. When Pippa opened the door, no one was outside, only a puppy sitting quietly on the doorstep. Cliff had gifted the boy a pure white puppy. Pippa thought it was a stray dog, so he picked it up gently and whispered a promise to give it a home. At that moment, Cliff was secretly watching from behind the wall. Seeing the boy so delighted with the gift, her mood lifted considerably. Puppies really are simple and easy to win over. The next day, the steward vaguely mentioned to Cliff that a dog had shown up at young Master Pippa's place. Cliff pretended not to know anything, saying maybe it was just picked up somewhere, she had no idea. The steward smiled knowingly at Cliff. That dog appearing out of nowhere, it might as well have fallen from the sky. Meanwhile, the little tyrant was eagerly taking the dog out for a walk. The steward loudly told Cliff to look. Young Master Pippa was happily walking the dog that heaven had sent him. The phrase heaven had sent was even emphasized clearly. Cliff was furious inside, silently yelling that this old man was so troublesome. Did not he understand the difference between knowing and pretending not to know? When the boy brought the dog in front of Cliff, the animal growled threateningly. The boy named the dog Little Snow because its fur was as white as snow. The steward praised the name, saying it was perfect for a dog living in Snow City. But then, the steward's expression changed. His eyes widened as if he would noticed something strange. The sharp teeth and tiny claws made it clear this was no ordinary dog. Realizing it was a dangerous demon beast, the steward's face turned pale. Cliff immediately turned away, avoiding his gaze. The two argued right in front of the boy. The steward questioned Cliff, asking why she gave young master such a dangerous demon beast. Cliff replied that she had no other choice. Creatures that could survive in the icy region were extremely rare. The little tyrant seemed to vaguely understand something. Facing their endless argument, the boy said, "When I first saw it, it was small and white, really like a snowball." Hearing this, the steward finally accepted the truth. As long as young Master Pippa liked it, that was enough. While no one was paying attention, the puppy sneaked a bite at Cliff's sleeve, showing a fierce attitude. Cliff knew well that once such a demon beast accepts its owner, it develops a protective instinct and attacks any creature besides its master. No matter how fierce, it was still just a small demon beast, not truly frightening. Cliff glared sharply and unleashed her magic at it, saying, "I am the one who protects its owner." Sure enough, the dog dared not act up anymore, shrinking back in fear. The little tyrant noticed the puppy's unusual behavior and nervously fidgeted. The steward smiled and told the boy to learn how to train it properly. The boy was very interested but had no experience, so the steward suggested he take the dog to school, and she would help him train it. They chatted and laughed together, growing closer. Watching from the side, Cliff felt jealous. The puppy was clearly her gift, so why did it seem to like the steward so much? It was maddening. Though small, the puppy had extraordinary strength and glowing golden eyes, too. It was the first time the little tyrant had seen a dog with golden eyes like that. The boy was still lost in his own world, dreaming that the dog was a gift from an angel. The steward chuckled out loud. Cliff shivered slightly as the little tyrant said his life had always been lonely. Surely the angel knew that and sent the dog to him. At first, he even thought of naming the dog Angel. The steward was so amused he could barely stand, then awkwardly changed the subject and turned away. On the way back, he kept teasing Cliff, saying she would turn from an angel into a witch. Such a reputation, no one would ever believe it. Cliff's face darkened, her voice cold and threatening. "If you say one more word, I will seal your mouth." They hurried back toward the city gates. Cliff instructed the steward to absolutely never reveal the true identity of the dog to the boy, so as not to scare him. After all, this kind of magical creature, as long as it is well trained, is even more obedient than a normal dog. There is nothing to worry about. At that time, the little tyrant somehow found a piece of mist and happily played with the dog. Hearing the boy's clear, giggling laughter, Cliff felt as if the whole castle was suddenly filled with life. The next day, in a territory managed by Cliff, the daughter of the tribal chief fell ill. Her condition was not life-threatening but was quite serious. Cliff prepared some magical herbs and medicinal plants, handing them to the steward to deliver quickly. It took 3 days on foot to get from Snow City to the tribal village, but with teleportation magic, it was just a moment's journey. Cliff had the steward stay a day after arriving at the tribal territory. The steward packed the luggage, ready to set off. Just as he was about to put the teleportation permit scroll into his bag, Cliff stopped him, ordering him to go on foot and, if possible, stay there to set up a camp. The steward scoffed arrogantly, saying, if not for him, who would take care of young Pippa? Besides, once he left, the castle would only have the wizard, the little tyrant, and the magical beast. Just thinking about it was scary. The steward's worries grew as he spoke, feeling uneasy about leaving the boy with his highness. Cliff got annoyed, snapped once, and immediately teleported the steward away. Get lost, you damn old fool. The steward vanished, leaving only 2 people in the vast castle, the wizard and the little tyrant. Before long, the boy pitifully asked the puppy about the steward's whereabouts. Cliff replied that the steward was out running errands for her and would not be back until tomorrow. Hearing this, the boy pouted and turned away from the puppy. The steward had promised to make him a delicious meal today, but it seemed now he would have to eat with just the puppy. Cliff felt a pang of guilt inside, seeing how sad the boy was without the steward. I can cook for you too, she said, of course, using magic. Watching the boy's disappointed back, Cliff called him back. Wait, come with me. Then she quickly strode into the dining room, trying hard not to let the boy see her embarrassed expression. Cliff's competitive spirit was sparked. She had to prove she could take good care of this child too. When it was mealtime, Cliff found that the steward had already prepared food before leaving, just needing to be reheated. She breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing a table full of delicious dishes, The boy's eyes lit up and he ate as if he had not eaten for 3 days, eagerly and messily. The puppy sat beside him, sniffing and nibbling on the food. Cliff did not eat anything herself, just watched the boy intently. Outwardly, she pretended to be annoyed. How can you eat like that? If you say you have not eaten for 3 days, maybe someone would believe you. But inside, she was secretly happy. This kind of appetite was definitely a good sign. The boy thought he was eating too fast and that the wizard might be upset. Cliff silently disagreed. That is not what I meant. But when the words came out, she said, why do you apologize every day? Apologize for what? What is there to apologize for? Just eat. Only then did the little tyrant realize the boy had probably never seen the wizard eat before. Cliff, sitting beside him, was so bored she tossed the teapot into the air. She explained to the boy that wizards do not actually need to eat. The boy learned something new again, his eyes wide in surprise. That is amazing. Cliff pretended to be disgusted, pouring water into his cup. What is so amazing about that? Just eat. But inside she was screaming, eat as much as you want. The cheerful meal passed by, and when he finished eating, the boy bowed in thanks and prepared to return to his room. Cliff followed closely behind, not leaving his side. The boy turned around, startled. Your Highness, are you watching me? Cliff replied coldly, of course, to make sure you do not cause trouble. His straightforward answer panicked the boy, who quickly promised Cliff that he would not cause any trouble and would stay quietly in his room, but Cliff still did not believe him. During the steward's absence, she decided to supervise the boy constantly, also taking the chance to observe what he usually played with. Cliff sprawled across the boy's bed, trying to look casual but keeping her eyes glued to him. Under that intense gaze, the boy became extremely tense. Cliff asked, what do you usually play? The boy nervously replied, I usually play family games. Cliff told you to act it out for her to see. She would not just watch silently. Facing the witch's pressure, the boy responded firmly, pushed the dog aside, and began the performance. He let the dog play the witch, and he himself took the role of the butler. The dog was treated like the boy himself, and then the game started. The dog immediately grabbed the boy, bit wildly, and the dog's head burst open, its parts scattered everywhere. The family game had not even started and was already completely over. Cliff suddenly jumped up from the bed. Only then did she realize something was wrong. Her face turned stern as she wondered who would dare cast an animal that can't understand humans as herself. The little tyrant was overwhelmed with fear and covered his eyes, stammering, I do not want to play anymore, I really do not. Cliff snatched the broken dog from him and magically restored it perfectly. For some reason, this time she joined the family game herself. She played herself, the little tyrant was the butler, the boy played the little tyrant, and the dog played the dog. The little tyrant nodded once, and the game began. The little tyrant helped out as the butler, with Cliff directing from the side. She started pointing out the boy's acting flaws, but the one refusing to cooperate the most was the dog. It showed absolutely no interest in the game. Now, the dog played the little tyrant, and the boy held the puppy up and brought it before the witch, telling it to pay respects. When their eyes met, the puppy was initially cocky but then growled fiercely. Cliff got angry and immediately sent a signal to quiet it down before she intervened, demanding it behave. The next moment, the puppy shyly curled up, trembling, then obediently snuggled into Cliff's arms. The puppy playing the little tyrant was now held by the witch, making the little tyrant extremely jealous and wanting a hug like that too. Cliff panicked, thinking, who would hug a butler? When refused, the boy's face fell. Seeing the boy disappointed softened Cliff's heart. After all, he was not really the butler. This time, she made an exception and hugged him. Hearing that, the boy immediately snuggled into the witch's arms, thanking her, thank you, your highness. He nuzzled her chest, acting like a spoiled child. It was their first close contact, and Cliff hesitated briefly before gently patting his back. Though never admitted, she probably missed warm hugs like that. Cliff gave the little tyrant a warm embrace. The boy felt playing family games with the witch was much more fun than playing alone. Cliff turned to the dog and asked, playing together with us is fun, right? The dog emitted a few low barks with a puff of dark energy. The boy urged, answer quickly. The dog responded with one bark. Cliff looked at the boy happily enjoying her care and felt quietly proud. See, even without a butler, I can take good care of this child. But 3 hours later, she collapsed, eyes vacant, her whole body exhausted and drained. After hours of playing, the boy still had not rested, one hand holding the dog, the other directing the puppy, full of energy. Cliff was worn out and wanted to end the game immediately. She had an idea, suggest switching to a different dog, the dog that does nothing at all. She flopped onto the bed and explained to the boy that this was the traditional game dog of the cold region. They lay side by side, not allowed to move at all. Whoever moved first lost. Cliff closed her eyes as her consciousness drifted off into space. Turns out playing with kids is this tiring. Time for a break. Your Highness, the boy's clear voice called, pulling her back to reality. Annoyed, Cliff snapped, what now? It turned out the boy had been lying on the bed all along, eyes wide open, with the puppy sleeping soundly on his chest. After a moment, the boy could not help but ask, can we talk? Cliff answered bluntly, no, you do not know the rules. Then reluctantly added, fine, I will let it slide this once. The little boy whispered softly, yes, immediately. Cliff sternly warned again, no talking either. After a while, the puppy woke up and barked happily. The boy immediately suggested, how about we switch to a different dog? They could not enjoy even a few quiet minutes before the boy and dog got noisy again. Cliff held her head, feeling as if she would just been slapped across the face. No way. The baby is truly terrifying. Steward, please take him back quickly. The very next day, the steward finally returned, carrying a large sack full of the tribe's specialties. As soon as he entered the castle, the steward's first words were to question Cliff. Did the boy cry at all yesterday? Cliff kept a calm expression and reported that Biba was doing very well, eating properly, and did not cry at all. But inside, she felt as if someone had punched her hard in the chest, silently shedding tears. Clearly, she was the one who should be crying. The steward remained suspicious of Cliff's words and insisted on confirming for himself. Early the next morning, as the boy just woke up, the steward hurried to his room and smiled, asking how he had been yesterday. Your Highness did not leave your side all day, right? Thinking back on yesterday, the boy beamed. Your Highness not only played with my family and me, but also taught me a new dog trick. The steward immediately turned toward the pet, a new dog trick. At that moment, Cliff sensed something was wrong and tried to slip away, but the boy innocently kept talking, saying the dog was just sitting there. Cliff panicked while the boy revealed everything from yesterday. When the part about the wizard rocking the boy to sleep came up, the steward finally relaxed. He stared intently at the wizard's face, flushed with shyness, then left the boy's room, teasing as he went, I never expected you to be so good at caring for children. If only that awkward game had not happened, it would have been perfect. Looks like from now on we can often entrust the little one to you. Cliff was startled and tried to refuse, but it was no use. The baby is exhausting enough, this will not happen a second time. After the steward returned, Cliff no longer had to care for the boy alone, nor did she have to play family games anymore. Though she still found the little guest quite overwhelming, she gradually got used to the feeling. Now, whenever she saw the wizard, the boy would naturally rush over and hug her. Their relationship was no longer what it once was. Some time later, the little tyrant's dog had grown a lot, while he himself had not grown an inch. That day, strange blooming roses appeared along the castle's roadside. The boy was happily out walking his dog. The steward had warned him not to be outside after dark, saying it was a night when demons caused trouble and he must return before sunset. But as he ran, his eyes were drawn to the strange roses by the roadside. It was the first time he had ever seen such radiant, glowing roses. Their pure color matched exactly the iris color of His Highness Cliff. Just as he reached out to pluck a rose, a sharp thorn pricked his finger, drawing blood. Fresh blood dripped onto the petals, and the dog, sensing danger, quietly crept closer, then gently licked the wound clean. It was getting late, so the boy planned to take the dog home. But in the next moment, the sky suddenly turned an eerie black, with a full moon hanging high. It was clearly still the third day, so why had the sky changed like this all of a sudden? The blood-soaked rose began to emit an unsettling red glow. The dog immediately sensed the danger, leapt forward to block the boy, growling fiercely. The boy did not understand what was happening and sat down in panic. A stream of dark energy rose from the ground, gathering behind him before taking the shape of a person. Cliff, the wizard calling out his name. The boy looked up, seeing the wizard dressed in a bright red gown. Her eyes glowed with a hypnotic red light as she beckoned him to come into her arms. The boy hesitated, reached out, but the moment his finger touched hers, a chill ran through his body. The wizard placed her hand on his head and pulled him close. The boy was surprised and asked, Your Highness, how did you know I was here? Did you also go out for a walk like me? The wizard smiled softly, It was you who called me here. Your blood led me to you. The boy did not understand the meaning behind those words. The wizard suddenly changed the subject, whispering, You must be so lonely. Poor child, all these days and nights you have been all alone. Her words struck a tender chord deep within him. Tears immediately welled up as he nodded and replied, Yes, each snowflake was as big as a feather drifting down. The witch promised the boy, I will always be by your side from now on. I won't let you be alone anymore. Hearing this, the boy was deeply moved. But then the witch pushed him away and laid down a condition, Give yourself to me. The little tyrant did not understand and asked, What do you want me to give you? The witch said excitedly, Tell me your true name, and you will belong to me. The boy felt something was wrong. He had already told her his name was Piba. Immediately, the witch let go of him, her face turning cold and stern. That name is a lie. Tell me the name engraved deep in your soul, your real true name. The boy looked up, not knowing what his true name was. But long ago, someone had called him Ampan. Outside the icy castle, blue roses transformed into illusions resembling the witch, trying to seize the little tyrant's mind. They wanted to learn his name to control his soul. The boy immediately sensed the danger and roared at the witch's illusion. Moments later, thick snow fell along with a powerful wind. In the freezing cold, the little tyrant trembled. His steps felt fragile as if the wind might blow him into the sky. He wrapped his arms around his chest, struggling to stay steady, and pointed directly at the witch. You are not His Highness. Who are you? You are not allowed to impersonate my lord. Exposed, the witch's illusion tilted its head, eyes showing a strange gleam. How could you break my illusion? Faced with that terrifying expression, the boy grew more determined. This person was definitely not his highness. His body temperature quickly dropped. He clenched his fists and declared, I will never belong to you. Leave now. The witch's illusion laughed eerily. How foolish. If you tell me your true name, you could live forever in a dream of happiness. Then her eyes glowed coldly as she lunged forward to seize him. Sharp claws shot out, slashing toward the small, fragile figure. Just when victory seemed certain, a massive force suddenly burst forth, knocking aside the witch's claw. That power was like a bottomless whirlpool, shattering her arm. The illusion was horrified. How is this possible? Before her stood the boy, his voice low and forceful, filled with pressure far beyond his age. Go back to where you came from. You will never take me. His eyes widened, turning blood red. The illusion shivered in fear. This kid. How does he have such terrifying power? He is quite confident too. Unable to overpower the boy physically, the illusion switched to attacking his mind. She whispered repeatedly in his ear, poor child, do you really think that arrogant witch would ever love you? No matter where you run, in the end, you will be discarded in tragedy. Just wait and see. No matter when you live, you will belong to me. Before she could finish, the boy roared and charged, striking her arm. A sharp cracking sound rang out as the illusion's body exploded, shards flying like shattered glass everywhere. A small fragment unfortunately lodged straight into the little tyrant's eye. His vision darkened. He could see nothing. His soul seemed to plunge into endless darkness, with only the sound of the boy's own scream ringing in his ears. Desperation crept into his heart. Was this how he was going to die? In that moment close to death, Clitha's smile appeared in his mind, softly calling his name, come on. Finally, the boy fainted, collapsing onto the cold, snowy ground. Meanwhile, inside the castle, Clith was flipping through documents, thinking about finding a new friend for the boy. Something like a magical creature resembling a chicken or a snake. But on second thought, those magical beasts are too dangerous, and for a boy like him, they carry uncontrollable ferocity. Thinking of this, Clith could only shrug helplessly. That foolish kid has not even fully trained his puppy yet, so how could he possibly tame a real magical beast? She stubbornly stretched out on the sofa, muttering that finding a magical beast both obedient and smart like that dog is really too hard. Maybe she should switch to plants instead. Just as Clith was relieved thinking the boy had put his faith in a tree, the steward rushed in, panicked. The young master Pipa is missing, and tonight is the full moon. On this full moon night, the young master's guardian was disturbed by magical beasts and collapsed out in the freezing snow. The steward hurriedly informed Clith young master is missing. Realizing today was a special day, Clith instantly tensed up. On a full moon night, the Guardian's power surges uncontrollably, releasing magical energy recklessly. She suddenly remembered she had forgotten to warn the young master not to go outside tonight. Although the steward reminded him, he had not stressed it enough. Clith jumped up from the sofa and anxiously asked where the puppy was. The steward said the puppy must still be with the boy. That was a small relief amidst the misfortune. At least there was a magical beast protecting him, avoiding the worst-case scenario. Clith immediately ordered the steward to search every corner of the castle while she went to look in the places the boy usually frequented. Hours passed, but neither of them saw any sign of him. Outside, the biting wind and snow were so cold even Clith was close to giving out. Looking at the endless trail in the forest where the boy often played, now silent and empty, Clitha's heart swelled with sorrow. She had once thought that a child so unlucky from the start, destined for hardship, would grow strong just by receiving a little care. But she forgot this was a frozen land where magical beasts roamed. One small mistake could cost the boy his life. Thinking this, Clith clenched her fists tightly and pressed on with the search. At that moment, she spotted the young master unconscious on the cold snow. The puppy was lying guard beside him, shivering from the cold. Clith held the boy close to check his breath. Fortunately, he was still barely breathing, but his body temperature had dropped dangerously low. His condition was far worse than she thought. First, he had to be brought somewhere warm. Clith carried the boy back to the castle. The steward was horrified to see the young master unconscious. Clith immediately told him to prepare warm blankets while she tried to restore the boy's body heat. After laying him on the bed, she began casting a powerful healing spell. But even this strong magic could not wake the young master. Clearly, the problem was with his guardian spirit. The steward explained that the guardian spirit had been stolen by the guardian beast. If that was true, the boy's will alone would not be enough to wake him up. While the steward was still confused, Clith made a firm decision. He would stay and watch over the boy's body. She would personally go find the boy's guardian spirit. On the full moon night, the boy's guardian spirit was stolen by the guardian beast, leaving him in a coma. Clith then used a dangerous technique to directly enter the boy's consciousness. This was an extremely risky spell. If she slipped even a little in the spirit world, the subject could fall into chaos and never wake up, and the caster might suffer backlash as well. Luckily, Clith succeeded in entering the boy's consciousness realm. In the original story, Clith had used this magic a few times, but as a reincarnated soul, this was her first attempt. The boy's consciousness appeared as a palace exuding an eerie aura. Clith carefully walked through the palace when suddenly a child's voice echoed in her mind. "Your Highness, it is really scary in here." The voice is scary, and the place is not happy at all, but I still like you. I like you the most, even more than my mother. These were the boy's deepest, most sincere thoughts. Hearing this, Clitha's heart swelled with joy, her cheeks flushed pink thankfully. The steward did not hear, or he would have teased her for 10 years. Remembering her important mission, Clith did not hesitate and loudly called the boy's name. For your father, please answer me. After a while, the boy's consciousness slowly drifted, weakening and fading. His mother would never come back. It is okay, I still have your highness. I really want your highness to hold me one more time. That distant and lonely voice was definitely not something a child would say. Having lived for decades, this was the first time Clith had ever heard such a profound sadness. Right after, the little tyrant's emotions suddenly grew intense. If your highness no longer needs me, then what should I do? Can I still be a useful child? Those chaotic feelings twisted into sharp thorns, wrapping tightly around Clitha's body. If she let herself get caught in that emotional whirlpool, neither of them would ever wake up. She had gone somewhere else, but the boy's soul grew more and more polluted, making her struggle to breathe. She could not stay here any longer. She would come back tomorrow. Just as Clith was about to leave, she suddenly sensed a strangely familiar magic flow. Guided by that magic, she moved forward, following it for a long time until the source abruptly vanished. At that moment, she noticed something slowly approaching her. She cautiously turned around, and behind her appeared a gigantic spider, glowing bright red all over. She breathed harder than she expected. Clith tried to run, but as she cast a spell, the red spider suddenly struck fiercely, hitting her directly. The force was so powerful it not only harmed Clitha's consciousness but also affected her physical body and reality. With no other choice, she had to face the spider head-on. However, the red spider seemed to anticipate all her defenses and immediately changed its attack strategy. A chilling shiver ran through Clitha's heart. She was no match for this spider. If its power was this terrifying even in the subconscious, it was hard to imagine how frightening the boy would be when fully grown. Clith did not want to confront the little tyrant directly in the form of the red spider. She only fought with all her strength to defend herself. But no matter how hard she tried, the outcome was already decided. There was no point in wasting time on a meaningless battle. In the next moment, she shouted straight at the red spider, "Vibrate, go back now." The spider's consciousness flickered, its thick body unsteady, and Clith immediately shouted again. "Everyone is waiting for you. If you can hear me, answer me." But in the blink of an eye, the spider charged at her once more. Clith gave up her defense, closed her eyes, and accepted her fate. After a moment, her body remained intact, completely unharmed. When she opened her eyes, the giant spider's huge tentacles had stopped, halting its attack. Just then, the ground beneath Clith cracked open with a loud crash, and she fell straight into a freezing cold stream. Below, in the icy cold water, the little tyrant sat curled up, arms wrapped around his knees. "Whoever you are, please hold me once. I do not want to be alone anymore. Just a little love is enough." Immediately, Clith surged forward with all her strength, breaking the invisible bonds and tightly grasping the boy's small hand. In that instant, Clith awoke, returning to reality. Opening her eyes, she felt her whole body aching as if pricked by needles. Kwanare sat right beside her, his face full of worry. "You stayed in the magic realm too long. You almost did not make it back safely." Clith gently touched herself. In her consciousness it felt like only a few hours, but in reality, a whole day had passed. That thought immediately startled her. "Where's Bipa?" Kwanare quickly replied, "Safely out. Thanks to you the boy's soul has returned." Looking at the little tyrant lying on the bed, breathing steadily, Clith finally exhaled with relief. After a while, the boy slowly opened his eyes. He was finally awake. Both Kwanare and Clith were so happy they almost cried. The boy looked dazed, not understanding what had happened. Clith immediately hugged the little tyrant tightly. He was truly overwhelmed with joy, fearing he might never wake up again. Letting go, Clith looked at the boy with a gentle gaze and promised, "It will be all right from now on. I will hold you more often." As soon as she finished speaking, Clith collapsed beside the boy's bed, utterly exhausted after a stressful day, completely drained of energy. In her dream, she saw the little tyrant again, standing under the cherry blossom tree, his back turned to her. When Clith called his name, he suddenly turned around, his eyes glowing red like stars, his gaze so powerful it overwhelmed everything, jolting her awake. This was the first time since becoming a witch. She had slept so deeply she did not even realize when she lost consciousness. When she opened her eyes, the little tyrant was right there beside her. "Your Highness, you are finally awake." It turned out the steward did not take the sleeping witch back to her room but let her lie on the boy's bed instead. All night, Clith held the boy closely without letting go, sleeping straight for 12 hours. When the boy woke up, the witch was still blaming herself. If she could not even protect a child, how could she deserve to be called the ruler of the Snowlands? Thinking back to the moment she fainted in the dream, she saw someone who looked a lot like P3, but the eyes were definitely not his. In reality, Clith shuddered slightly. Could it be Ampen? After a moment, she could not hold back and found a magical scroll. She decided to put Ampen's matter aside for now. There was something more important to deal with. Saying that, Clith prepared to open the scroll. This time, she was determined to pick a gift the little tyrant would like to make friends with him. As she enjoyed the scent of the flowers and the peacefulness of the garden, footsteps suddenly echoed nearby. A familiar voice called her name. Clith turned to see a young werewolf holding 2 pots of sunflowers, his tail wagging slightly. As soon as he saw her, his ears perked up and his face lit up with a bright smile. "It has been a long time since you last came." The smile on the witch's face gradually faded. Before her stood the young werewolf, kneeling on one knee with his hands clasped, eyes sparkling brightly. "If you want to come, you should at least give me a heads up. I would come all the way to the castle to greet you." Then he stood up and gave Clith a hug. Clith frowned and firmly refused. "Gross, back off." The young werewolf's expression was definitely odd. Oddly enough, he loved plants even more than fighting, a well-known quirk in his tribe. Since he was little, he was obsessed with plants and had even built a garden right here in the frozen lands. Clith did not want to hear any more nonsense and told the werewolf to show her the flowers, even the magical ones. Not long ago, Clith had personally asked Ampen if he liked flowers. The boy said he loved them, especially bright, colorful ones. That is why Clith came to the werewolf's garden this time to ask for a beautiful flower for Ampen. The werewolf tried to lighten the mood, grabbing her hand and kissing it. Clith immediately punched him, then pulled out a handkerchief to wipe her knuckles clean. She made her purpose clear, she just wanted a suitable flower, no matter the cost. The werewolf replied that no payment was needed, just one kiss from her, saying this as he placed her hand on his lips. The witch's face darkened. This guy was seriously crazy. He was clearly a shy kid once, but what had happened growing up to turn him into this weirdo? Enough. Clith quickly stepped away and focused on choosing the flower. Just then, she spotted a flower in full bloom, stunningly beautiful, with fiery red petals surrounding a bright yellow stamen. Bringing it back to the castle would surely brighten up the snowy landscape. Clith picked a flower from the greenhouse, planning to take it to Ampen. The werewolf boy, the garden's owner, accompanied her. Clith called him over. "Come here, look at the flower I am bringing for you." The werewolf approached Ampen, looked him over carefully, then reached out to ruffle his hair. "Such a cutie, what is your name?" Ampen replied, "My name is Pippa." The werewolf laughed heartily. What a cute name. They quickly became close, and Ampen called the werewolf brother. The young werewolf was unreserved and proudly boasted he was the garden's caretaker. The gardener ran back and forth like a dedicated delivery person. Suddenly, Ampen reached out to touch a branch, and Clith was startled. She had forgotten to warn him that this was actually a magical creature that enjoyed nibbling on human fingers. But immediately after, Clith's expression stiffened. Something unbelievable had happened. The once fierce magical flower let Ben fly freely, even shyly swaying its branches, as if happily dancing. And Ben burst into laughter, so adorable. Clith watched the scene and could not help but smile, sighing inwardly. It truly felt like the main character the whole world was rooting for. The werewolf boy, thrilled by the sight, muttered in disbelief. "Carmelia usually loves biting human fingers, so why is she so gentle now?" Excited, he stepped forward and demanded, "Kid, who helped you with this?" Clith immediately delivered a sharp kick, sending the werewolf flying back, shouting, "This is no place for spectators." Receiving the gift, and Ben was overjoyed and eagerly asked Clith why he suddenly thought about buying flowers. Clith denied it out loud, saying the castle was too cold and he just bought them to change the atmosphere. "But if you like them, you can take them to your room." With the task complete, the werewolf teenager was sent back to his territory. Before leaving, he tried to show off, propped himself on one knee, kissed Clith's hand, then ran off. Quite the spectacle. Standing nearby, and Ben looked puzzled and asked, "Why did he kiss your highness? Isn't kissing only for people who really like each other?" Those words hit Clith like a slap to the face, and he quickly denied it. "Absolutely not. How could I possibly like that guy?" She seriously explained that kissing can also be a sign of respect, not just for people who like each other. But Ben immediately protested, "I also like to kiss, I want to kiss too." Clith blushed and hurriedly brushed it off. "That is an adult's custom. Kids do not need to do it. When you are a bit older, I will teach you." After the flower pot was brought into the castle, the steward was immediately drawn to this rare plant. He noticed there were still buds on the plant, sure to bloom soon. Clith silently mocked, wondering what those tiny buds even were, having to wait 7 years before they would bloom. Just as the steward reached out to touch it, Clith shouted sharply to stop him, "Don't touch it, it is a magical creature, it will bite your finger." The steward, startled, jumped back several feet, and scolded, "Why did not you say it was so dangerous earlier?" He looked closely and furrowed his brow, recalling that this plant was rare and only found in the Eastern Empire's history books. He turned to Clith, suspicious, "Why would you think of raising something like this?" Clith raised a finger and replied, "It is the forest guardian. It has been 7 years, soon it will bloom. This castle is so gloomy and lifeless, so I brought a pot from the werewolf's place to brighten things up a bit." Thank you all for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like, share, and leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss the latest videos.